OK， 那我们现在就接下来的话，就是再请我们营运长还有执行长帮我们分享 COVID-19 这一块的一个紧急授权。好，谢谢。
So, Cousin is going to start with the COVID-19 emergency use first. Cousin, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning again. I am going to talk about just a small portion of this one because Maggie is going to cover a larger portion of it. Let me just this is the outline, similar to the one that we had. This is a very popular topic these days, COVID-19 pandemic. And I don't know if Maggie mentioned that we, as also I mentioned earlier, that we have been involved in many trials from the beginning. And as you know, that some of the condition changes. But obviously, Taiwan managed the COVID-19 the best, and we in the US have not done that great, and actually maybe one of the worst countries with respect to what we have so far, and hopefully we'll control at some point. And for this talk, we cover just a few topics that actually the easy part of this discussion is going to be my part that I'm going to cover, and Maggie's going to cover the more difficult part of the talk. We start a bit by just telling you a background, and for some maybe boring background because it goes to legal and things of that nature. And but going to focus on emergency use authorization because that's a big deal, the emergency use authorization from the regulatory point of view here. Because when it is becoming emergency use, the rules and regulations are a little bit softer. So that's why they don't take it that easy to allow the emergency use authorization. We talked about in vitro diagnostics and with respect to emergency use authorization and what product applicable to that one. Then from that point, Maggie is going to take over for the rest of the talk, and that's focusing on the COVID-19 specific requirements, which is going to be very, very specific, and the way it has changed over time. As I said, when it was in March, it was actually February that we submitted the first and we got approval in terms of starting a trial or safe to proceed. But as time goes on, there are times that we get a call from the agency that they want to give us a call and talk about some changes that they are implementing. And it is, we all are learning, the FDA is learning, and the industry is learning about the virus. It's changing. Next is the individual emergency use application for IBD, for COVID-19. And also talking about the umbrella use of it, especially for the validated serology tests. And the last but not least is the fact that there is the complexity of the molecular-based laboratory developed tests. That's another aspect of it that Maggie is going to cover with respect to COVID-19. Let me start by looking at the numbers, both how many infected and how many deaths worldwide. The chart on the left is the daily new cases globally, and the chart on the right is the daily death globally. And when we were preparing for this talk, at that time, globally the infected were 8 million. And just before this talk, just a few minutes ago, I went and I checked. It is more than 9 million now with respect to infection, and it's rising. And with respect to the death, again, when we prepared this was around 450, now it's more than 469, and 120-some thousands of it is in US. It's very, very low at first rate. As you can see from the chart on the left, we have not reached the peak yet even, the number of infected. And you look at the chart on the right, it really is not going down as we were hoping. But let me focus on the the US FDA background. And with respect to the background, and let me say that, and focus on the legality of it. What is the legal base for it? Obviously, I've seen that the legality of FDA as a whole that is involved is based on, it is Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act. And obviously this Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act was involved, constantly changes, and it involves more and more. For example, it was the cigarette and the smoking was not part of it. Now it is part of the Food and Drug Cosmetic Act. And so many other parts, which we're not going to cover. But the one is the COVID, obviously. The COVID issue is clearly part of that one. And Health and Human Services, the HHS, has 3 parts. And when it comes to the emergency, really all 3 parts somehow are getting involved, at least 2 parts of it, more than. The 3 parts of HHS are involved with COVID, but the 3 parts are the regulatory part of it, which is FDA, that's located here in Maryland, and the research part of it, this is NIH, National Institute of Health, again located here somewhere in Montgomery County, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. These are the 3 main parts of HHS, and in this one, really all 3 somehow are involved, and it was declared that it is an emergency. And when it is declared emergency, there are some limitations, there are some duration for it. How long? Based on the law, this cannot go forever being emergency. As I said earlier, the rules are a little bit not as strict when it is emergency. It is limited for 1 year and no more, and hopefully this pandemic doesn't last more than a year, and hopefully, based on the drug and some vaccine that we are getting involved, hopefully we'll address it. And with respect to which product will cover this, and obviously it's not all the products are eligible for authorization. It has to be documented that there are no adequately approved available alternatives. That must be the case, otherwise it cannot be eligible. And with respect to the categories of products, this covers, it's not for all of them, but there are fairly large range of EUA products. And this includes the chemical drugs, biologics such as vaccines, blood products, and so on, and also medical devices, in particular in vitro diagnostics. How about the risk and benefit? The eligibility of the EUA has to be declared by FDA to determine that there is no risk and it has potential benefit. The potential benefit must outweigh the potential risk with respect to diagnosis, prevention, and or treatment. But with respect to COVID-19 in vitro diagnostic is that the head of HHS, the head of Health and Human Services, stated that there is a public health emergency, and that was sufficient by itself to justify the authorization of emergency use of the IVD for the detection and diagnosis of COVID-19. One more thing before I hand it to Maggie, I should say that this is CDC. In order to expedite things, CDC permitted their data to be used or referenced by other companies. And that is really, really something that was extremely important for the emergency use authorization, as long as that data and those are going to be used for COVID-19 diagnostic devices. I stop here and I hand it to you, Maggie.
Thank you, Kazan. I will share my PowerPoint here. Okay. So Kazan wait me about 20 minutes and we will have a Q&A session for you. Thank you. Okay, so I will continue to talk about this EUA for COVID-19 IVD. So as Kazan said, the reason we come up with this talk, because in February, we were thinking about we only do the AI talks as we did for our workshop. But then because this COVID-19 come out and we submit our first EUA for a client in February, and then March and April and May, and every month we have different response from FDA, and we find out, okay, it's going to be more and more stress and more will need to be done. So it's better we also communicate with the TFDA, see what we can do. Because I always talk to my colleagues in USA, we, as a Taiwan, we are doing a so great job for COVID-19. Thank you to the TFDA people. But if you think about like the mask, we have a national team, and Taiwan is well known as a national team, as a mask national team. But if you think about the IVD, we're supposed to be the one we should have a national team for IVD, right? Because we are the first wave of the country who encounter this pandemic, and just unfortunately we are a bit behind this one. And so I think from now, because I see a lot of companies they're also working on the COVID-19 IVD, we are hoping we can catch out this wave, because it's not going to end. And developing a rapid test is really essential for reopening for the finance as well. Okay, so back to the COVID-19. There are three types of the SARS-CoV-2 COVID-19 IVD. The first one is a diagnostic test. So we consider the RT-PCR, the antigen is part of this test. The second one is a serology antibody test. Basically, it's an IgG-IgM testing. But as you know, there's a lot of arguments, scientific argument, like are 100% people going to get immune response or not? How many percent of people will have response? And in terms of response, like different region of people, can you really have the accuracy consistent? So as you can see that the serology test, the IgG-IgM test is not going to be used as a diagnosis. Everything test by IgG-IgM, you need to confirm with RT-PCR molecular testing later if you are positive. Or in this way, FDA has more relax for IgG-IgM testing. The last one is a test for managing COVID-19 patients, because if you see the patient who get infected by COVID-19, a lot they have the inflammatory. So I think Rush so far is the only one company they have been approved EUA for IL-6, this biomarker IVD testing. So this FDA guidance, FDA published this policy for diagnostic tests for coronavirus 2019 during the public health emergency back to February. I remember I was in USA Chinese New Year for a pre-sub meeting, and all my colleagues and then they are laughing at me because during Chinese New Year, Taiwan has the first wave of COVID-19 all the way from China, and my colleague was laughing at me wearing a mask in the office. And then I went again in February for the FDA AI workshop. No one cared about wearing a mask. I was in UK for MHRA workshop. And then staying in London, no one cared about COVID-19. I came back on 2nd of March. Then several days later, it exploded in USA. COVID-19 became a big thing. So FDA published guidance when they notice there is a possibility that COVID-19 is going to be explosion in USA. But they are doing very fast because this guidance is immediately in effect. So usually FDA will publish a draft looking for comments from the industry, from the sponsor, from the academic, from everyone. But for this one, no comments immediately in effect. Also, they come out with a lot of template. Send us to FDA, you also have all these template for emergency use package template. You can just fill out the template and then submit to FDA. So in this guidance, this policy, there are actually 4 different policies. The scope of this policy actually is just really to accelerate the availability of the COVID-19 test. Even right now, they're still talking about we need to accelerate the speed. the guidance, one is to lead into an EUA submission, the other is to lead into a state authorization state. So in US it's different from in Taiwan because FDA is a federal, so it's going to be the wide range. But each state has its own issue, and then at this emergency time, the state also has authorized to enable even the lab and the LDT test can be used. So for the commercial, the manufacturer, the sponsor, this guidance, this policy is going to make them more flexibility, more faster to bring the kit to the market. And as I said, FDA provides flexibility for the serology test, the IgG, IgM test to be marketed with the notification to FDA. So we will talk about this notification in the later slides. The policy A is a laboratory, basically it's a clear certified laboratory to perform the COVID-19 test before EUA submission. So the procedure is like this. You have the lab develop the test, and then before you submit to US FDA for EUA, you have to do all the validation. So first, every policy, you need to do the validate your test in-house, all the validation data. You go through the specificity, you do your LOD, and then you notify FDA notification. FDA, I'm going to do the test. I'm going to perform a clinical performance. I'm going to do the testing in the human specimen. At this time, you haven't get an EUA, but you haven't get an EUA yet. But you're going to do a notification. I can share Emira's experience with you. In February, the first EUA we submit for a sponsor, we didn't have any clinical data from the clinical specimen because I should say it was a Korean company. So Korean at that time they already have quite several testing in Korea, but this company, they come with all the validation data in-house or artificial, the spiking virus. So it was not the virus, the sample from the clinical specimen. We submit to FDA. We get FDA to assign a reviewer immediately. You don't have to wait several weeks. I think we probably just at the same day we get a response from FDA. And FDA didn't ask for clinical specimen. So this one we get EUA very fast. We even didn't do a notify. We skip this process. We go ahead for EUA application. Then later, we try to do the same way. No, it's not working anymore. Like we still submit EUA without notify FDA. You will see because FDA actually give you really short time. So we always just do a submission instead of notification first. And recently FDA even say like I think it's April or March. April I think. FDA is asking clinical specimen now. The limit clinical specimen, but because for example we submit the EUA in March, sometime in March. But in March, FDA has so many EUA to review, so the response is getting slower. Then by early April, we get a response from FDA. FDA is saying that, okay, I can give you approval, you can go ahead to EUA, but you have to submit at least how many confirmed positive from your post-marketing data. So at that time, they are saying like, before submission you don't have, but after submission you must provide. But now if you submit, FDA say if you don't have, don't submit. So you see a difference, it's more and more difficult. And then even I see some of the cases, not from us, that people come to us for rescue. They have the molecular RT-PCR kit. Probably it's more complicated or it's more, I don't know, like for some reason FDA is saying that don't come for EUA, please go for 510K. So if you think about go for 510K, you need to do a reproducibility study, you need to do your comparison study, and in terms of you need to do this IVD study in USA, you need to have at least 3 labs. There's a lot of work, quite a lot of time to conduct this study. So it will slow down the process for the kit to get to the market. So the reason I'm saying this is that everything needs to do fast at this time. So come back to here, the policy A is for the lab. As you can see, it's for the lab. Confirm, okay, first you notify FDA, and then during the determination if they want to approve your EUA or not, you have to send the first 5 positive and the negative sample to FDA. And then in your report or your labeling, you have to indicate like this test has been validated, but it's still under review by FDA because you have not get the EUA approved yet. Okay, so that's why this one is saying that you have to submit a complete EUA request within 15 business days. That's why I say usually what we don't do the notification, we just go to submit because within 3 weeks you have to submit EUA, so there's no difference. So we will prefer you have everything ready and go ahead to submit your EUA. So if the lab has any positive result, the lab has the responsibility to notify a federal and state authority. The policy B, second policy, actually is just for the state. It's a state authorization. I don't know if you are following every day, like the New York State Governor. He also has a briefing. It's like our Chen Shizhong, every day at 2 p.m. you have a briefing. So every day before I went to bed, I always follow what the governor said. In March, I'm really impressed that he was saying like, we as America, how come we have nothing in our country? Everything is from China. All our PPE is from China. I need a kit. I need an IVD. I go to the supplier. I go to the IVD manufacturer. IVD manufacturer told me my supply chain is in China. We don't have anything. So under this emergency status, the government basically saying like we cannot do anything if everything have to regulate by the federal. So the state start to take over the authorization. They identify the lab within the New York State because New York State was the first one who really get worse. They identify more than 100 laboratories, and then certify this laboratory can do the testing because if you imagine everything need to send back to CDC for testing, then you cannot catch up the speed of the infection at all. So White House, Trump, like if you go back to January, February, he said that, oh, this is not COVID-19, it's nothing. It's just a flu. We have more people die for flu. So COVID-19 is nothing. We don't have to care about it. But end of March, like the White House has this momentum, like saying like, okay, every state, you can go ahead to approve your diagnostic testing now. So the policy B, as I say, is for the state authorization. So it authorizes the laboratory within the state, and then can carry on authorization based on your state law. However, even FDA is not going to review the process, but FDA, they are expecting to oversight the process. Like, to be honest, what FDA is saying, like, even the state authorized you to do this testing, as a lab, it's better you also notify me you are doing this testing. So FDA is saying that also like notify us, and if you want to expand more outside your own state, then you can notify FDA for this flexibility. Policy C, this is more for manufacturer, for the company themselves. Like they are developing and distribute the diagnostic test. as I said earlier, all the tests need to be validated, and then they need to notify FDA when they're going to distribute the kit. So I understand some of the company will prefer to send a notification, because as soon as you send a notification, you can start to distribute your kit. Basically you can sell your kit. So you notify FDA, you distribute your kit and then use for clinical use, and then collect the data. When FDA is still reviewing when FDA is still waiting for you to submit your emergency use, and then later if you submit, FDA will review it. So in this case, you have to submit your EUA request within 15 days. And the submission should including, if you are not the distributor, you should including your distributor information as well. And this policy actually it doesn't apply to the at-home testing. I think there is no at-home testing so far, but it also doesn't apply to at-home collection kit. There is several at-home collection kit. It doesn't apply to policy C. So taking action that FDA actually, even they doing this policy C, FDA is always like active to review your data, your ongoing clinical data, ongoing testing. And then if FDA find out what your performance didn't meet what you planned, FDA can always remove you from the notification list. I think we will probably see FDA often like send out an email saying like this is removed from the notification list. The last one is the develop for the serologic, the lab and develop the lab and the company, the manufacturer for the serologic test, the antibody testing. This one I have to say because there's a lot of argument for the antibody testing. All the company want this testing because antibody can do it fast. But how about the specificity and the accuracy, and can we really use this kit to say this person has been infected by COVID-19? Even you are infected by COVID-19, there's a second chance you are infected again. We do have a patient in USA. They was hospitalized and then do all the treatment in the ICU, recover, detect without, do the RT-PCR, and then there's no virus, get out of the hospital, go home. Then several weeks later, get infected again. So we don't know is that they still have the virus is dominant, or they really get infected by other virus or other people around this patient. We don't know. So even you are using this antibody test, you say, okay, I already have the antibody. Then so what? Yeah. So under this situation, I think FDA still encourage, because whatever they can provide is always helpful for US the current situation. Same here, you have to validate this testing, then you have to notify FDA before you're going to distribute it. The test report have to include, in the labeling has to including all this information. First, of course, this is still the procedure is still, you should say it's still not reviewed by FDA, it's under review. That's what I think they say. And then the very important thing is the negative result cannot rule out SARS-CoV infection. Past result may be due to the past present infection, and such as the non-COVID-19. So all these virus, you can be, the past result can maybe due to this, not really from the current COVID-19. So, sorry. So that's why I think from my point of view, I think FDA has more room for this policy, and send like this EUA request need to submit 10 business days after you send a notification. And then this policy doesn't apply to the at-home testing as well, and doesn't apply to at-home specimen collection. So why I say FDA have more room for this policy, because you see the last one. FDA has something called umbrella EUA. So this umbrella EUA actually can be reviewed by the NIH and National Cancer Institute. So that's why I say FDA more room, because FDA allow the third-party EUA. So submission requirement for the FDA IVD EUA. Actually, I get all of this from different templates. I mean, from the molecular, serology, antigen, all these templates. So I guess everyone must have all these templates from US FDA website. And first, the first thing is always that I ask you to explain why you need this kit, how you fulfill this unmet needs. And then, of course, talking about your product history, have you get approval for other purpose? Then you have to provide your product information, the manufacturer. The manufacturer part will be much less than the official approval package. And then instruction for use, then the labeling, the analytical validation information, the risk and benefit, and the healthcare provider or the distribution information. And if it's a lab, you need to provide the lab, the contact number, the director, and I think we also provide the certificates, the CV for the lab people. So more specific requirement for RT-PCR molecular or antigen here. I think here we need to be RT-PCR. It's same as the previous slides, but I would say now the big difference that if you look at clinical evaluation, FDA really asking for this before it was not necessarily be a clinical specimen, but now you need to have a clinical specimen. It's okay to have a frozen clinical specimen, but you cannot spy in, you cannot use a replicant or anything to replace this positive result. And FDA defined the acceptance criteria for the performance is 95 agreement at a low LOD and 100% agreement for other construction. It's quite strict for RT-PCR kit. Oh, by the way, I do see like some of the kits in the notification list, FDA removed it because they didn't reach the criteria. So even before you get an EUA, FDA can remove it anytime if they see the data you provide doesn't meet the criteria. The second one is a serology test, it's an antibody test. So this one we talk about, you use IgG, IgN, and as you see, like FDA is asking positive negative agreement, and then also now FDA for this one is also asking you to do a clinical specimen. The good thing is that for this one, FDA already say the result of the serology test cannot use as a diagnosis of COVID-19 infection. Very clear say that. So under this this statement, FDA they agree you to if you already have one IgG IgN test, but you are modified or you have some more specific antibody but very similar principle, you can do a bridging study and then have the NIH or NCI to review your package. You don't need to send to FDA. So what FDA is saying, like, under the same scope of my authorization, because I already authorized this kit, under the same scope, you follow my scope, you go to ask NCI or NIH or other authorizations. So far, I only know two. I haven't seen others yet. You can have them to authorize you to use it as an EUA as well. So you don't need to always go to FDA. So until I think 15th of June last week, there are 100 EUA IVD is authorized. 79 is molecular, 20 is serology, and 1 is antigen. And I think like as I know, a lot of Taiwanese clients manufacturers are trying to do antigen, and I think that's a thing like we all think if you're going to reopen the border is one issue, and how you're going to control border. The rapid test will be the key issue. Then how you do the rapid test, I think antigen testing will be very, very important. Like also it's more specific compared to antibody testing, and also more like I think in terms of cost and time saving. So I can see there are more and more companies submitting for antigen testing as well. Okay, we talk about this umbrella, and this is like on April 20th, FDA first issued an umbrella for COVID-19 antibody test. And this was, I think it was reviewed by NIH, if I remember right. And FDA have to need to confirm a test meet the criteria outlined in the scope authorization, as I say, right? If you meet the scope of FDA authorization, then other agents also can provide this authorization. The validation process FDA design actually is for example, the CLIA certificate lab will use a test to analyze at least 30 COVID-19 testing and 80 antibody negative samples. A test must achieve an overall sensitivity of 90% and specificity of 95%. Class-based result must achieve a sensitivity of 70% for IgM and sensitivity 90% for IgG. So you can see FDA already set the criteria, his criteria here. Like when you submit an EUA to FDA, you always have a room to discuss with FDA for all these numbers. But now if you're going to the umbrella for other agencies to review it, you better to have a better performance than these criteria. So the next one we will talk about is the lab use. To be honest, I guess because when FDA published this, the New York State government was really complaining a lot. The federal why you don't go to purchase a lot of testing for us. It's supposed to be federal job to get all this testing material reagent, but why you don't do it? And the federal saying that it's your business that you better to find a kit for yourself. I think the California state governor, he or someone like Florida, I can't remember. One of the governors, he purchased a lot of kit from South Korea, and at that time the New York State government saying like, I don't care about you anymore. I will do my own. So at that time you see like they authorized the lab to develop their own reagent because they cannot wait China, South Korea to get their reagent. So they authorized you can use your own reagent, your own kit to do the detection. But there is also limitation here, like you have to first submission your accessory template for the lab. It will be an RT-PCR kit, and then it's not covered by existing commercial EUA. So it's a lab-developed, laboratory-owned kit. You can buy other reagent. You can also develop your own reagent. And it's an RT-PCR, right? And then the test material, as I say, you can design or manufacture by the lab or commercial resource. So at that time, basically they just really open. So far there are 37 the laboratory LDT issued, and as you see, they are all RT-PCR. So if you're going to submit EUA to FDA, what FDA is two procedure. What they say two procedure. First, you notify them and you submit the EUA package. You also can go direct to submit EUA package. It depends how ready your package is. So if you're going to notify FDA, you have to include in the name of your lab, the responsible person, the address, contact person. If it's a manufacturer, it's a similar information. And then it's all by email. FDA now, they don't have an in-person meeting, they don't have an in-person deal with all the paper data, so everything is submitted by the email. And then, as I said, like within 10 or 15 days, depends different kit, you have to submit your EUA package to FDA, and including a Form 3514.